With everything that had happened, I just had a strong conviction that the relocation would work. My efforts can't be in vain, I thought. That night, a day before Badbi would leave camp, I was restless. I couldn't sleep. I was just thinking of the travails I passed through those past weeks. They were terrible. I started to remember the weeks I spent in the room I was given earlier before I moved to the residence of the other couples. I couldn't make it a place to live in because I was already on the move to relocate, and so I managed it the way it was. The untiled floor, uncovered window, bad water, no power supply, and poor network. I couldn't even unpack my clothes in my bag. I hardly stay in the room. Once I came back from school, I leave immediately because of the intensity of the heat. It was unbearable. Amidst all these things, the neighbors didn't show concern. Well, I didn't expect much from them. Maybe they are used to such living. I was planning to leave, so I didn't care less. Those times I would go out, I would hang around with one of the other couples. We would talk about a lot of things. We were close. We would complain about our dissatisfaction with the environment and wished the service here would immediately come to an end. Unlike the other fellow couple who enjoyed the place, he had some of his tribal friends and communication was easy for him. Since we were close and in the same school, I decided to move in with them pending when my relocation would work. Everything was going smoothly, not until the guy I was close with told me his fellow couple wants me to leave. According to him, he refuted and insisted I stayed since I wasn't causing a nuisance. Since the guy didn't tell me directly, I just ignored and focused on my relocation process. The day finally arrived, and I woke up that morning feeling joyful, sensing that my departure from the relocation was imminent. I prayed, entrusting everything to God's hands. As I headed to school, I eagerly anticipated a call to confirm when I could print my relocation letter. But by 11 a.m., I hadn't received any news, and my excitement began to wane. I felt baffled and uneasy, my hopes starting to dwindle. Just as I was about to lose faith, I called the assistant LGI to inquire about the status. He reassured me that I shouldn't worry and promised to call me as soon as it was done. His words briefly lifted my spirit, but the call I made changed everything completely. I started to reach out to friends who were still in camp to see if those who had initiated the relocation process had seen any update on their status. One friend informed me that her colleagues had begun seeing the changes reflected on their dashboards. I was taken aback when I checked mine and found nothing had changed. I tried calling the assistant LGI multiple times, but he didn't pick up, which only added to my frustration. I felt furious, saddened, and a headache quickly set in as I struggled to make sense of the situation. Worried that my blood pressure might be spiking, I considered visiting the secretariat to speak with the assistant LGI directly, but decided to wait after checking the time and transport options. When the assistant LGI didn't return my calls, despite my missed call notifications, I asked my uncle to intervene, given his involvement in the matter. I provided my uncle with the assistant LGI's number and waited for an update. Meanwhile, I was exploring other options to redeploy as soon as possible. I reached out to friends with the connections, but the prices they quoted were exorbitant. I couldn't afford them in my current situation. Feeling frustrated and helpless, I wondered if the universe was conspiring against me. Just as I thought, that was my biggest worry. Another unexpected issue arose. A few days later, I noticed a change in behavior from the fellow couple I had a good relationship with. He started giving me attitude and became distant, only talking to his other colleague. The only time he would speak to me was when he needed money for us to cook. We cooked together those times. During that time, his tone was cut. One afternoon, I asked him, "Patrick, are you angry with me?" He denied it, questioning why he would be and why I would even ask. I explained that I had noticed a change in his behavior, but he didn't respond. One fateful Sunday, my uncle called me and said he'd spoken to the assistant LGI, but the man seemed uncooperative, telling my uncle that I should call him instead. I tried to dial the man's number, but my phone was out of airtime. I quickly borrowed some from my network provider, something I wouldn't normally do, and I called him. When he picked up, I greeted him, and he immediately raised his voice saying, "Why did you give someone my number to call me about relocation? Didn't I say this was between us? Why are you telling everyone?" I pleaded with him and apologized, and he eventually calmed down, saying he would speak to the person in charge of the relocation that evening. When I asked him when the relocation would be finalized, he assured me it would be done within that week. After hanging up, I called my uncle to update him on the conversation. He advised me to wait and see what happens, giving the assistant LGI assurance. This was a week after Bat B had left the camp, and I was filled with mixed emotions as I sat on my phone, pondering the possibility of the relocation actually happening. Although, a part of me wondered if the assistant LGI was just scamming me. I pushed the thought aside, considering his position. To hedge my bets, I started exploring other options, reaching out to friends with potential connections. However, I was discouraged by the exorbitant amount they quoted and my growing distrust of people. Meanwhile, the attitude from my fellow copper in the room continued to escalate, becoming increasingly obvious. He would deliberately leave for school with the other copper without informing me, which was unusual since we normally went together. I chose to brush it off, hoping things would eventually normalize. However, my interactions with the assistant LGI weren't going any better. He kept postponing the relocation, always with a new excuse. Eventually, I decided to let go of the relocation and focus on completing my service here. I called the assistant LGI to inform him of my decision and requested a refund. He agreed without hesitation, saying he would instruct the relevant person to process the refund. At that point, it became clear that the assistant LGI hadn't been working on my relocation as promised. I felt disheartened and had to accept my fate. After that, I shifted my focus to making the most of my remaining time in the service here. I decided to return to my original accommodation and invested in fixing up the place, including the windows and furnishing the room to my liking. Although it was a significant expense, it was worth it, as I enjoyed the best of my stay. Being alone without the stress of dealing with difficult roommates was a blessing. I also continued to follow up on the refund with the assistant LGI, but he kept repeating the same promise. Eventually, I decided to let go and leave the matter in God's hands, focusing on making the most of my time left. The rest of my service here was filled with fun, new experiences. I made new friends both among fellow coppers and the local community, taught and imparted students in 2 schools, and even learned some of their local languages and custom. Looking back, it all ended on a positive note. While I had initially hoped for relocation, I realized that Kogi wasn't the right fit for my plans. Nevertheless, the experience was worth it, and I'm grateful for the memories.